Privilege for me. And actually, um, Dr. Rajesh and Dr. Susan Thomas are called power couple. They have been featured in many Outlook magazines and various things. And these are the most famous book on India's financial markets. I am now reading this for the past 10 years. Often on so much data and empirical analysis. That is a good book, has to be digested. As some of the authors say. And this is a most popular, authoritative book. And now it is being quoted in 3,000 rupees. So I request sir and madam to write a second edition. Yeah. So I can't actually read out the resume and profile, but madam and sir have studied at IIT Bombay and then at USC Los Angeles based in economics, and they have a lot of things to they huge research prowess, and this the madam has published so much in IGIDR and various other forums. Now they are heading this XKDR forum, and particularly in financial markets, market microstructure, and law, public policy. It is difficult to list out their achievements and publications. And now I welcome Susan Madam to please give your loud applause. Because it's a flight back to Goa for the sir and madam, I have to rush till lunchtime, then we'll go on our own pace. So I request madam to take over.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Dhananjay. As I was talking to one of your colleagues, can everyone hear me? Way at the back? Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here along with Ajay to talk about some of the work that we do. Dhananjay is just kidding. We've had the opportunity and the good fortune to be researchers in a field that was very fast growing. After we finished the PhDs that we did, and we were actually researchers looking for a nice bit of work, and India at that time when we started, which was in the 1995 or mid-90s, securities markets changed completely. And as young researchers, it was really lucky for us to be there and having the skills to be useful for the market. So most of the times when economic researchers ask, what is my role in life? You have to search for it. For us, we were lucky because it was kind of dropped into our laps. We came back to India after having done a PhD into a field which was just starting, and because all the stars had aligned, so it was a great stroke of luck. Now, as Dhananjay said, a lot of the work that you will see that I have done and have published is on securities markets. We showed you a book that is dated, but that was where I did a lot of my foundational work on understanding markets that provided financial services and financial products. What I am going to do today is actually go to one end of the market and ask, what does it do for all of us? Okay. So the topic of my conversation today or presentation today is measuring financial inclusion, the why and the how. So I don't know if all of you read the newspapers, all of you are people who are doing an MBA, so you will be reading the economics and the financial newspapers, and I'm sure that you have seen this phrase, financial inclusion, in all of the articles that you're reading. A show of hands, how many of you have actually noticed the phrase financial inclusion in the newspapers over the last couple of years? Nobody? Stick your hands up. all these seats, you're very small people, I think, and the seats are very high, so I can't see anybody. Okay, fine. So all of you agree financial inclusion is something that we as a country, banks, RBI, SEBI, all of these people talk about financial inclusion. Am I right? So is it supposed to be something that all of us want more of? Show of hands if you say that we need more financial inclusion. A show of hands if you say that we need less financial inclusion. Okay, so that means that all of you think, or a show of hands if you think that financial inclusion is perfect and we don't need any changes whatsoever. Okay, people, you have to choose, right? I gave you 3 choices and very few hands showed up at all the choices. So, but I do think that the greatest choice was we need more financial inclusion. And the challenge that I will give all of you is to say, how much is there already in the country? Do we need to grow it a lot more? Okay? And this talk is about saying that when we think about financial inclusion, a problem that we haven't really thought about is that we don't know exactly what it means. Okay? And this talk is about helping us think about what does financial inclusion mean? And so once we understand what it means, how do we go about and say, have we got good financial inclusion, low financial inclusion, or like the littlest bear in Goldilocks story? You may have read the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, where she goes and drinks everybody's porridge, right? And Papa Bear's porridge was too hot, Mama Bear's porridge was too cold, and the baby bear's porridge was just right. So this is the question that we need to ask for ourselves when we think about financial inclusion. Do we have too much financial inclusion? Do we have too little financial inclusion? Or is financial inclusion just right? And this talk is about the work that tries to do this. So number 1, as all good researchers and people who study finance or economics, the first question to ask is, what is financial inclusion? And if you think about it, there are a lot of words but people don't really pin it down. So the first time that this phrase was used anywhere in the world, it was actually by Kofi Annan when he was at the UN in 2003, when he said that the financial sector must be inclusive, okay, which means that it must provide financial services to the excluded, to people who do not have it. And financial services include savings, all of us know how to do that, credit, that's borrowings, and insurance. And these are the 3 that they alluded to in 2003. Y.D. Reddy, when he was at the RBI, took this up as a challenge for India. And he said that we need financial inclusion for India. And there he defined it as saying, financial inclusion is the process of ensuring access to appropriate financial products and services needed by vulnerable groups. Right? So all of these are big things that fit or create a domain of what we should be thinking about when we think about financial inclusion. And it should be at an affordable cost in a fair and transparent manner by mainstream institutional players. So what I am going to pick out and say that when we think about financial inclusion today, the world has changed since 2005 because we have seen that when there was a global financial crisis in 2008 or during the demonetization of 2016 or the current COVID pandemic in 2020, people said that even if you were rich, if you had a house, if you had a car, but during these episodes, people were just at a loss. They did not have savings, they got into stress, and so what is the meaning of a weaker group or a vulnerable group has changed from 2005 to 2023. But what has remained is all the services and the products that are being provided by institutions. So think about people in the common service sector. How many of you, well, none of you will have borrowed, but when I think about borrowings, I don't think it's the bank is the first place that anyone in India will think about when they think about borrowing. Does anyone have an alternative? What's the first place that you think about when you want to think about borrowing? Since all of you are most of you are young, I would say your father, right? And he's not a borrower, he's not a lender. Most fathers will say, you want money, I'll give it to you. He's a gift. But sometimes when you want a large sum of money, even fathers may say, I'm not going to give it to you. I'll give it to you as long as you give it back to me at a point in time. Okay, forget the father. Maybe it's your uncle who you can do this from. So family tends to be the first people from whom you can take money. But here, when we think about financial inclusion, we're not talking about family, they are talking about the formal system. So it's got to be a bank or an NPS. Why should we worry about it? All of you are doing an MBA. One of the things that, as I said, things about financial inclusion that has changed from 2003 and 2005 is that in the recent past, when you talk about financial inclusion, people are also asking not just about are the people getting access to products, but when you give finance, do you have a social impact? I told you, right? After the 2020 pandemic, we realized that it was not just poor people who need finance, but also people who have jobs, who have a house, who have a car. When there is a big stress that happens in the market, then they are also facing stress and trouble. So financial inclusion must also cover those people. And today what most banks are told is that if you are giving financial products to people, you should also make sure that they are the appropriate financial products. So they want to see that when people are financially included, there is positive social impact. So the social impact has become a very big thing in who can raise money to start a financial institution. So if you want to start a bank today, or you want to start an NBFC today, most of the times what you find is that the people who will give you capital to set up these institutions are also going to ask, when you set up a bank, when you set up an NBFC, or any kind of a financial service provider. So you can think about fintech, right? There are a lot of fintech companies and platforms who give money for people to start companies, to start enterprises. There are also people who worry about what is the social impact. So there's a large new world where there is this term called ESG investors. You will have seen this. ESG stands for environment, social and governance. Right? So these are the people who say, I will lend you money to start a finance company or to start a finance business. Most of the times in the earlier days when they gave you money to start a business, they would say, show me profits or show me returns in 3 to 4 years. What is different about the ESG community is that when they get the investment money, they are waiting for returns not in 3 or 4 years, but they give you time. They say, take the money, show me investment returns in 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but for this luxury, you should also say that you are having an impact on the lives of the people for whom you provide these services. So this is what we call social impact investment. The problem is that today when you think about social impact investment for financial inclusion in the country, most of the people who are giving the money, who are the ESG investors, are saying, I don't understand whether you can have social impact. And so they are not very happy about giving ESG investment money if you are trying to start a fintech or start a bank. Instead, they are giving money to renewable energy. So what's the difference? Why are ESG investors so happy about giving money for renewable energy versus social impact? The big difference is that renewable energy, you can see that people are using different forms of getting energy, not coal and not fossil fuel. It is readily visible. You can measure it. Whereas in the case of finance, it is not so easy to measure. So the reason why we think that measurement of financial inclusion is very important is because number one, no one knows how to do it. Number two, if you are able to do it, you can say to people in a very credible manner that I am achieving social impact because I can show you that the financial inclusion has gone up. Today we don't have any measures for financial inclusion in that way. So when the measurement is weak, there will be fewer people who will support you when you say that you're doing a financial inclusion business. And that's a problem. Most of the times when you say that you want to do good things, people say, prove it. Who are the people who are actually interested in seeing financial inclusion happen? And that's three sets of people. On this slide, I have said, number one, there are people who are sitting in RBI and SEBI or even Ministry of Finance who says that I want to make sure that my population is growing more and more financially included. Right? So those are the policy makers. Because most of the times policy makers, Ministry of Finance will say, I will give money to people out of my budget to start a business which is going to improve financial inclusion in the country. Number two, we already talked about them. These are the foreign investors or the domestic investors who are able to give you money to start new businesses. These are called the social impact investors, or a more commonly seen phrase is the ESG investors. And the question is, how much social impact are you seeing? The more the social impact, the more the money that I'm willing to give to you. And lastly, for the people who are doing the business itself. So a bank would like to know that when they are lending money or they are reaching out and giving a savings account to a particular poor household or a poor community, are they able to achieve social inclusion or financial inclusion? So once you have a measurement system that you can give to a policymaker, that is someone at RBI or the Ministry of Finance, or to a social impact investor, or to an FSP, you are able to see, they are able to see how much financial inclusion they are able to get, and that allows them to make better decisions about where to allocate their funds. So how do we measure it? So it's not like people have to try, right? There are some measures already out there. Usually when you go to the RBI and RBI puts out a report on how much financial inclusion there is, they usually ask, how many bank accounts are there? How many of you have heard of the Jan Dhan Yojana? All of you have bank accounts? You all don't have bank accounts? Awesome. So even if you don't have a Jan Dhan Yojana, you do have bank accounts, I hope, right? And if you do not have a bank account, please go and open one. Because one of the things that you should do as soon as you start getting a job is figuring out how to save. Okay, and a bank account, unfortunately, is the only way through which you can access all of these financial products using which you can save. So usually when people think about how much financial inclusion there is in India, they ask how many people have bank accounts, how many bank accounts have been opened. They don't even say how many people have bank accounts, because one person may have 3 bank accounts, right? 3 bank accounts doesn't mean that that person is more financially included as a person who has 1 bank account. So there is double counting or triple counting when you look at how many bank accounts exist in the country. So that's a problem, because if we say that financial inclusion is measured by the number of bank accounts, all of us think that India is perfectly financially included. But that's not the case, because if you go out and ask the person, how much money have you saved so that if you suddenly lose your job, how many months can you survive without going back to your family and saying, give me money because I'm starving? That makes sense, right? That if finance is helping you and you have a bank account, then if something bad happens to you, so you break a leg or you lose your job and suddenly your ability to get a revenue or earn an income has suddenly gone away, you're financially included and stable if you don't have to suddenly starve because you don't have income anymore. So we think that looking at the number of bank accounts in the country or how much transaction is happening through UPI, these are the standard things that people talk about when you think about financial inclusion. But that's useless, because at the end of the day, I was telling you about how much business these people are doing, the banks or the UPI. Financial inclusion is supposed to be about helping the vulnerable groups to support themselves better in times of trouble. So none of these really give you any sense of what financial inclusion is in the country. So good measures must capture meaningful impact of having this access. So the number of UPI transactions in a day is very nice, right? People will say there are 3 million transactions that are happening through UPI in a day. But if you say that there are 5 trillion transactions happening using cash, what is the big deal? So when you see a number, it is useful to have a benchmark. Once you have that benchmark, you understand whether it's good or bad. But more than that, we need to know this critical question. Sorry. The question is the life of the person or is the life of the household better off because they have access to finance or not? If you do not answer this question, we do not know anything about financial inclusion. So we need to think about what finance is and what it seeks to achieve. As an economist or a person who thinks about the theory of what is the point of finance, there are two big things that finance is supposed to solve for. And remember I said, bank account plus savings is finance. Everyone agrees? So if you have a bank account, you have a safer way of keeping savings, you're financially included. What happens when you have such kinds of savings? Right? You can manage your consumption better. Remember I said the example is, you suddenly lose your job or you break your leg and you cannot earn money anymore by going to do your job. Do you stop eating? No. Irrespective of broken leg or not, you have to eat. Irrespective of having a job or not, you have to eat. So the question is, for the amount of expenses that you have to incur, whether you have an income or not, are you able to do it? Is the job of finance. If you have finance, you should be able to do this better. This is what we call consumption smoothing. This is a term that you will see in a lot of the literature, but the hope of finance is that if a person or a household is financially included, they will be able to smooth their consumption, which means that you will be able to continue on the same level of consumption that you need to do, whether you're earning your money or not. Right? So if you have savings, even if you lose your job, you will be able to buy your food and pay your rent and get your cell phone bills paid. All of this stuff are expenses that you will do every day, irrespective of whether you're getting cash coming into your pocket on a day-to-day basis. There is a term that is being used today in the financial inclusion measurement field, which is called well-being. It's called economic well-being. Economic well-being, a part of this is this, right? That can you do your day-to-day expense management? You are going to incur expenses because you're living. You're a breathing human being who needs to eat, drink water, go to the loo, take a bath, all of that good stuff. And for that you need to pay money. And this is one part of what is well-being. Later on in the lecture I'll show you what else is included in well-being. The second task of finance is to help to get you from one level of consumption to the next level of consumption. Most of the times people talk about finance as debt, right? So you go and borrow money. And why should you borrow the money? Because you're going to start a new enterprise or a new business using which you can earn more money as compared to what you used to do before. This is called finance for enterprise. And that's point number 2, which is help generate sustained gains to income. Now what we really need to do to capture whether the person is financially included or not is not just to say, do you have a bank account? That's pointless. But because you have a bank account, are you able to do consumption smoothing? And are you able to get a loan so that you can grow up to the next level of consumption? So this is what the role of finance is. Point number 1, if you have finance, then what it should help any individual or household to do is to do consumption smoothing. If there's one thing that you take away from this lecture, it should be this. Finance is not just to show off and tell your friend, oh, I have a credit card, right? That's not the point. The point is that if you get into trouble, then the finance should help you continue eating as you did, doing your expenses as you did, without getting into stress or going and borrowing money from somebody. The second part of the role of finance is to help you generate a better lifestyle, right, on a sustained basis. So if you are eating 5,000 rupees on a monthly basis today, you may be able to borrow money to start a business so that you go from 5,000 to 15,000 rupees every day. And because that could be for many reasons. Maybe the extra 5,000 is just because you want to subscribe to a library that helps you read all the papers that you want. Not necessarily watch Netflix, because I think that's really cheap. But even Netflix is education at some level if you choose correctly. So you can think that at a more basic level than just needing to eat every day, needing to pay your rent every day. There are things that you can do to enhance your lifestyle, which puts you in a better spot. Because when you get to an education, you're able to pay your fees on monthly, on an annual level that helps you get an education that gets you to a better style of living. So what we want from financial inclusion is to enable every household, every individual to be able to do this. Okay. So I've already talked a little bit about it, but when we think about measurement of anything like this, which is a policy idea, right, that financial inclusion is good, what we need to do is to think about three parts of the measurement. And this is something that you will see to a certain extent in the book by Ajay, co-authored with Ajay Selkar, called In Service of the Republic. It's a good book, you should think about getting it to read. But in each of these fields, there are three parts that you need to measure. You need to measure the inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes of any policy intervention. So what I'm going to try to persuade you is that when we think about financial inclusion and you want to say how much financial inclusion is there, there's a three-part story. You need to see inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Okay? The place that we first saw this as an important measurement approach was in education. So this is not something that we did, but everybody was wowed because they understood the importance of measurement. When we thought about how much money is being invested by governments into education, the typical instrument that people used to think about is build a school, hire teachers, and the country will get educated. This, however, is just one part which is called inputs, right? Because you pay the money to build schools and to get the teachers. Then, though, you have to ask, you can build the schools and get the teachers, but if the students don't come, then what's the point of education? So then they said, okay, that's the second element that we need to measure. We need to measure how many kids are coming to school. But is that sufficient? For a long time, people said that was enough, right? If you have the children coming to school, then they're getting educated. But what we found is that that's not true, because the children who are going to the school may have been coming to get the midday meal, but when you ask them to read a newspaper or to do a simple calculation, none of them are able to do that. So ultimately, what is education for? To get educated children or to get educated people. So that's the third element of any policy, that when you make an investment into education, you're taking taxpayer money that you can put into building a good sewerage system or better roads. Instead, you will take that money and you will build a school with it. But at the end of the day, if you're the child who is passing through that school cannot read or do for sums, then it's pointless, right? So all that money has just gone down the toilet because the outcome has not happened. So for any policy intervention, and this is going to be my challenge, you have to look at measuring inputs. How many schools and how many teachers were paid for? That's the amount of money. The second part of it is the output. Is anyone using it? That's the number of children. But the third part is the most important, which is, are you getting children who are able to read and write and are numeric, can do their maths? So this is a paper that I've left as a reference here to take a look at that. But this just gave us the guideline of an input-output outcome measurement for any policy intervention. Now when you think about this for financial inclusion, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and what are the outcomes? And this is what we call. We said that inputs can be holdings in financial assets, right? So do you have a bank account? It's not sufficient. But we'll also say, do you have a savings account? Do you have a fixed deposit account? By the way, other than a bank account, how many people here have any other financial product? Nobody? Who has an insurance contract? Insurance! People there have insurance. What kind of insurance contracts are you with? Okay, so some of you have insurance contracts. How many of you have mutual funds? Not bad. How many of you have shares? Not bad. Okay, so in that sense, you're not that different from some parts of India. So there is a data set called the Consumer Pyramids Household, which goes and does a survey of about 170,000 households all across the country. Okay, and what we show on this picture is, if you look at different years, from 2014 all the way up to 2022, right? What this graph is telling you, what fraction of households has got what kind of instruments. And the instruments that we have are bank accounts, fixed deposits, post office savings, Employee Provident Fund. By the way, who has Provident Funds here? I'm so happy not to see hands showing up over there. How can you have a Provident Fund? Who are you? That person. Who are you? Yeah, you. Can someone please give him a mic?
Hello.
Yeah, hi. How do you have a Provident Fund?
Ma'am, I don't have Provident Fund, but I know about the Provident.
Yeah, that's not my question. I said, do you have one? Do you have, who are the people here who have a Provident Fund? Thank you so much, though. Who is the Provident? Okay, how do you have a Provident Fund?
Madam, good morning.
Good morning.
Myself Praveen. So actually, I am the assistant professor in Jain College, KJ.
Got it. Okay. The chap with the red shirt.
Good morning, ma'am. Myself Payan. In my degree final year, I applied as a GRE in exclusive marks in 1990. So,
Got it. Awesome. Right, so it makes sense to me. I was actually not expecting to see any hands over there. Right, please let's have a round of applause to the people who have Provident Fund. Thank you. Right, okay, so then can I ask my question again? How many people hold shares, own shares, not know about shares? How many people own shares? Show of hands. Thank you. Okay, that makes sense. Although, since all of you are students of an MBA program, before you finish, I would request that you consider that all of you should learn how to own a share. Certainly, all of you should learn how to own mutual funds. So by the end of the year or your year, if I were to come back and ask the same question, I hope to see more people showing hands even from the back of the class. All right? Okay. But this is what India does. India, the blue line up there is bank account. Nearly 100% of the 170,000 households has a bank account. The dark green line is fixed deposits. And you will see that in the beginning, it was about 15% of the households had fixed deposits. It went up to nearly 90% in 2017, 2018, but today it's about 60% of the households hold fixed deposits. That means that people put their money into these long-term fixed deposits, but they've actually taken it out. And what we see that they are investing it instead is this big yellow line, which is health insurance. So during the last 7 to 8 years, households or families in India have taken money out of fixed deposits. That's a long-term investment that you keep your money into a bank. And what they're doing is they're buying more and more of health insurance. Does this make sense to everybody? Right? After you see the pandemic, a lot of people have died, then you see that people are buying health insurance. Because health insurance is a contract where you pay a premium, you buy the contract, but then at the end of the year, if something bad happens to you, the insurance company will help repay some of those costs. So you can see the kind of choices that households in India are making in terms of this picture. And it's a very interesting picture because it is telling you that people are making choices applying their mind, right? It's not like somebody says, do Jandan Yojana, and everybody runs and opens a bank account. But financial inclusion is actually in all these other choices that we are making. And that's an interesting story. So to go back to my original slide, right? How do you do input, output, and outcome measurement for a household or for India? So number one, how do you measure inputs? Don't tell me about the number of bank accounts that people hold, because that's about a bank's interest. It's not about a household. It's like saying that if you want to see how safe your country is, count the number of FIRs that are filed. Right? But that doesn't make sense. What you should be saying is, just because the FIRs have come up very high or come down very low, it doesn't mean that crime in the country or is changing. What you need to do is to go and say, ask the household, if it's 10:30 p.m. at night and you have a young child who is 18 years old, are you okay with that child being outside the house or not? If you're not okay with the kid being outside of the house, then no matter how low the FIRs come, it's going to be the case that it's not a safe country. Right? So getting crime experience of households is what is critical. You cannot look at aggregate numbers like bank accounts or FIRs to make a sense of how safe the country is or how financially inclusive the country is. So in the case of input measurement, what you should be doing is pick a random sample of households, go and ask them what kind of instruments are you holding. Most of the times when people try to do it, they focus on bank account or credit. Like, do you have a bank account or do you have debt? If you look at one famous example of agency that does financial inclusion measurement, it's the World Bank. The World Bank puts out an index which they call the Global Financial Inclusion Index. But the funny thing about that index is, of course, it's being collected for information across many countries across the world. But the funny thing about that index is, the only question that they ask is, do you have a bank account and do you have credit? Have you taken a loan and do you have a bank account? They don't ask about all the other assets that could be or are sold by financial instruments. So number one, there's much more than a bank account. I saw in that picture about Indian household choices, and there's much more than debt. For example, the most interesting product, the first financial product that was started anywhere in the world was actually, of course, insurance. Because people wanted to say, I'll give you some money today. If something happens to me during the year, please help me repay my costs. Okay, so we saw this picture. So that was about inputs, right? That you have to make sure that you're getting information from households, not just about accounts, not just about debt, but about all the instruments. So in this case, we had about 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 instruments. In this household survey, which is called Consumer Pyramids Household Survey, there is actually information about many more products, but in this case, we just looked at 8 of them. The second element of the input-output outcome measurement is outputs. In the case of education, it was easy, right? You could get money to build schools and pay teachers, and children as the output, right? How many children pass through school? What do you think about when you think about financial inclusion? This is a bit of a trick, but one thing that we came up to ask is, if anyone is included financially, then they will be making more and more payments through credit cards. Are we okay? So they will be making more and more payments through credit cards or electronically as compared to paying cash. That's what we thought, that go out and ask the question to these households. Think about the last 3 transactions that you did. In these transactions, how many transactions did you do with cash or not? So if I had to ask all of you, think about the last 3 transactions that you all did. How many of you used cash for all 3? Thanks. Have you all heard my question? I need an answer. Think about the last 3 transactions that you did, right? Something that you bought or you paid for. In that transaction, 3 transactions, last 3 transactions that you did, how many of you paid cash for all of these transactions? Stick your hand up. You don't need to be shy. I do that all the time. Okay. How many of you did at least 1 transaction using cash? Okay, thank you. But this tells me that in terms of financial inclusion, if I were to think that in a country where financial inclusion is very high, most of the transactions, in fact, nearly 100% of the transactions are done digitally. Right? So I would not, if we were thinking about that as a useful metric, and we have very, very different reasons why you may want to use cash or not, but if all else was safe and good, then we would expect that in a financially included country, most of the transactions were not done using cash. So I look at this group, I say that at least 1 out of 3 transactions is done using cash. My sense is, given the number of hands that came up, we are not there in financial inclusion yet. So this is one kind of an output that I can think about people using the financial system. People using the financial system as one measure. The last one is of course the hardest because, as I said, if you're using finance well, you should be able to see whether households are smoothing consumption or raising their income levels well. So what we do here is, what we need to measure is who are the people who are not able to sustain loss of job or loss of income. They have to run to the money lender and say, give me money because I can't feed my child today because I broke my leg. The second question that we'd like to ask is, when the household does get a savings account, are they able to sustain their consumption better? And if there's more finance in the life of that household, are they able to do this much better? So from an outcome measure, what we'd like to do is to go through a random sample of households and ask questions about how regularly are you able to consume as much food as you want, right? And is this irrespective of whether you lose your income or not? And do you think that you're okay, right? And this sounds like a very vague question, but that is what everybody in the world is doing today. So if you go to the US, you go to the World Bank, all these people who are interested in looking at measuring financial inclusion for their country or for a bunch of countries, what they are doing is they are running what is called a financial well-being or an economic well-being survey, right? So you pick a random set of households and you ask them a bunch of questions. The questions have method in the madness, right? Because they're trying to understand 5 things. Number 1, are you able to maintain your household on a day-to-day basis? Which is, can you meet your basic needs like food, pay your bill and rent on time? Number 2, are you able to sustain borrowing? So if you've taken a loan, are you able to repay that loan? Because if you're not able to repay that loan, then you can get into deep stress. Number 3, resilience. If you lose your job, can you continue maintaining your household? Number 4, planning, which is that if you thought that, I mean, most of you will not think about this, or maybe you do think about this, that when you're earning, you would like to be able to buy a nice house. Most of the times, people think of mortgage for a house, right? But at some point in life, do you think that you have the finances to be able to do that, right? So you make a long-term plan and you're able to carry it out. Or you want to go out and get a PhD, right, one day. And the question is, are you able to do that without having to go back to your parents or to take a loan for it? So do you have confidence in the financial future of the entire household? Now, this is the thing that we say is, most of the times this planning is happening at the level not of an individual. Because I keep saying, right, you're running into trouble, you run back to your family. So financial inclusion is about household confidence and not about an individual confidence. For those of you who are more interested in reading up about how to measure financial or economic well-being, there's a paper out there by Murali and Yukka, and you can read that and understand it better. Okay, so what I want to do is go from the abstract to a little bit of an application. We are the people who put this entire structure together. We thought about an input-output-outcome framework for measuring financial inclusion for India. And this is work that we at XTVR Forum did with another research organization called the Dwara Research Foundation. And what I'm going to tell you is a little bit of what we did on the ground and the kind of results that we saw. The question that we started off with was a core question, right? When a poor household gets financially included or gets access to financial instruments, are they better off as compared to those households that do not? So what are the features of the framework? Number 1, we build an instrument, which is, remember I said that for inputs, output, outcome, we have to go to a random sample of households and ask them some questions. So this is what is called building a survey instrument, and we built that instrument. Number 2, you have to run a measurement on households, and we have 3 distinct scores for what is the score of the household for financial inclusion, input, financial inclusion output and financial inclusion outcome. So there are three different scores. So some households can have a very low score on input, but they can actually have a very high score on outcome because they have wealth and they are safe. Then we designed a minimalist survey to build a data on households, such as customers of FSPs, and then we looked at how their consumption changed in time. One distinction that we make as compared with most people who worry about financial inclusion is that most people with financial inclusion, you remember that RBI definition of financial inclusion in 2005, they talk about vulnerable households. Most of the times when people think about vulnerable households, they think about poor households or households with low income. We said we don't want to differentiate that because we saw that in the pandemic, sometimes households that are not so poor were also vulnerable during that episode. So we look at both low and high income households, and you can read about all of this work in a paper that Indrajit and I did and was published earlier this year. Here are where the survey questions goes, and I'm not going to take too much time because I think I have about 10 minutes left. So you can read through this, but if you go through the set of outputs and outcomes, you will see that it's exactly what we talked about in the previous slides, right? But what is important is that we deliver this and capture this at the level of a household. We worked with one FSP, and that's a financial service provider, in 2021, and we got a sample of about 300 households, and it was across two different geographies. One was in Chhattisgarh and one was in Tamil Nadu. Okay, there were about 310 households, and we ran the survey, which had about 78 questions for all of this stuff. The response rate was 60%, which is that out of 310 questions, about 60% of the households answered all the questions. So there was no data drop. Some of them just responded less. So this is something that we should know about the households in our survey. Their monthly income was about 17,000 rupees a month. Okay, their monthly expenditure was less. That's like 14,000 rupees a month. There were approximately between 4 to 5 members in every household that we surveyed. Their technology exposure was quite high, right? So about 77% said that they had some exposure to technology, just like cell phones are ubiquitous. Physical asset ownership in comparison was lower, right? So it's like owning a scooty or having land. That was only about 40%. But look at the financial inclusion scores. Remember, I said we calculate a score for input, outcome, and output. The input score is only 20%, right? That means that it's a pretty low. The households that we surveyed had very few instruments. But the output was even lower. Only 20% of usage was there of the households that had these instruments. But the outcome scores were 54. Right? So it's 54% of a score for these households. So if you thought about financial inclusion only from the input point of view, this is a low financial inclusion set. But if you look at it from an outcome point of view, there are people who are really confident about their financial future. So it's a bit of a mismatch, and it was a surprise for all of us. These are the correlations between the two sets. That is, if you have input, are you correlated with output? And the statement is yes. So if you have a cell phone or you have digital payments, you tend to use them a lot more as well. So it's 97%. But between input and outcome, the score is not so high. Is that you have a bank account doesn't mean that you're happier because of it. And this is a table that shows how each of this correlates with different features of the household. What I'd like to point out is just this number. You should of course read all the numbers and understand it, and I'm happy to have a conversation with all of you. But our hypothesis was that if you're a richer household, you will be far more confident about the future. What we find here is that when you have, if you're a rich household with finance as compared with a rich household without finance, it actually makes a difference, right? Richer households with finance feel far more confident about the future as compared with rich households without finance, and vice versa. So if you're a low-income household with finance, you have a lot more confidence about the future as compared with a low household without finance. So we basically walk off thinking that, number one, we can actually capture something about input, output, and outcome of financial inclusion. But what we find is that it does matter for a household sense of well-being. So if you think that finance is supposed to make a household feel a lot more resilient, then what we see in this survey analysis is that it does. Of course, a note of caution, right? We only look at a set of things, like are you rich? Do you have access to a bank account or a bank branch? Do you have a cell phone? We didn't look at things like how much physical assets do you have? What kind of physical assets do you have? So, access to finance is one of many factors, but it is possible. So these are some of the things that we think are missing in our analysis. But here are the takeaways. We think that it is critically important if you want to understand that finance matters or has a positive impact, then you must measure it. You can look at the survey instrument. Everything that we have done in this work is out in the public domain. So there are papers and there are reports. All of these are put up as references at the end of this slideshow. What we do think is that, number one, you can apply this for different kinds of financial service providers. It's not just for banks. It can be for NBFCs or microfinance institutions. We're thinking of reaching out to a chip fund and saying, when you have people in your set and they have access to finance, lastly, we think that this is also scalable to other countries. So if you want to go to Bangladesh and run this, this is something that we can do. So I'm going to stop here. I'll just point you to all the papers that are there at the end of the slideshow. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take it. Even if they're clarification. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you whether it is actually the other way around, that confident households go out and use debt.
So, clarification, none of the instruments here are debt. So when we in this study look at financial inclusion, we are not looking at it. We're only looking at all the other instruments.
Borrow money.
Well, these people have done it.
Debt is the lubricant, right?
No,
You can't leave out debt.
We left out debt. So because for us we thought it is important. Debt is very different from every other kind of finance. Can I explain why? In the case of every other kind of finance, you pay for it today and you get money in the future. In the case of debt, you are taking debt today, so you're getting the money today, but you have to make a payment in the future. And so because these two things are very different in nature, we said we're going to look at this exercise first. Here, the way that we included debt is to say that it is a conditioning area.
Any other questions? Okay.
Cool. I'm happy to take questions afterwards. Email. If you talk to Dhananjay, you will get my email address and I'm happy to get to answer questions. But I feel that for right now I'll step down. Thank you.
Before inviting Dr. Rajesha sir, we just the press people want to have small. Không có dùng về jadi apa berdasarkan jadi dia nggak belum. Before that, I just will have a word that so again, good morning, and I invite all the people who have walked in a bit late, and privileged to invite Professor Rajesh sir, and I as a with your loud applause, and I thought I will just read out one or two sentences of his most popular book, In Service of Republic. This is to read also. It is accessible to laymen and also top class researchers in economics and public policy and law. He works at the intersection of finance, economics, public policy, law. The sort of it is a huge treat. So I can't read out his big profile. I will just read out one or two sentences from the praise for the book or comments for this book. In this book, some big person writes, Vijay Kelkar and Ajay Shah, two long-time advisors to Indian government, have written the new Arthashastra. This he terms as a new Arthashastra. That itself, Arthashastra by Kautilya is the old Arthashastra. This is the new Arthashastra of economic policy. And he says, every policy maker and future policy maker should be given this book while being told, before you do anything, read this. Before you do anything, any policy maker or people working in the public policy domain, government regulations. So I am reading through this for every before in the night. So many wisdom and all these things like unintended law of unintended consequences. So many things. It is like huge realization for me. And one more sentence I will read before handing over the mic. And the Week magazine says this book should be in the hands of as many lay people as students of economics and public policy. This book is accessible to lay people and also highest researchers in economics and public policy. That is the type of balance Sir has achieved with his, I say it is knife. The pen has his knife, he wields and cuts through the maze of finance, economics, policy, markets, all these things. Sir, humbly I request you, and we are blessed today. You have visited despite your tight schedules. So again at 12 o'clock, sir has to fly back to Goa for some conference. And if you, there is a type of people, giants we are having in Narayana group of institutions, Nellore. I am really blessed, sir. I humbly request you, and I request.
So to get started, I'm going to talk about the business of currencies. So all of us face many currencies in our life. We face Indian rupees, we face US dollars. How many people in this room have traded cryptocurrency? Okay, put your hand up. Wow, wonderful. I see one person. How many people have traded cryptocurrency? Okay, I see one more hand there. Okay, very impressive. How many of you have personally handled a United States dollar currency note? Okay, I see 1, 2. Okay, I'm going to talk about this world where there are many, many currencies. And so the question is, which currencies will become important? Why do currencies become important? What is going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years about the various currencies? Okay, so that is my title. How will the landscape of currencies evolve? Okay. So let me first go back into history. I am probably the oldest person in this room. Yes, maybe you are competing with me. For the rest, I think I am the oldest person in this room. But I have only heard from my parents that before independence, the Indian rupee was actually quite a dada. Okay, the Indian rupee was used in many, many places all over the world. Whether you take Middle East, like Muscat or Oman, or you take East Africa, like Kenya and Zanzibar, or you go down to Southeast Asia, like Singapore or Cambodia or Bali. In all these places, the Indian rupee was used as an everyday currency. In fact, some of these countries, like in Muscat, had an agreement with the Reserve Bank of India that you will print currency for use in our country. So the official currency of Muscat was the Indian rupee. Okay, that was where we started. Okay, and then lots of things went wrong. India became a socialist country. In fact, the Reserve Bank abrogated the agreement. It threw out countries like Muscat saying, no, we will not allow you to use the Indian rupee. Okay, so this is a very interesting and old history that sometimes we don't even know in India. As I said, I've only heard this from my parents. I've never seen this in my life. But actually think a little more. All the way till 2015, when I used to visit Sri Lanka, on the street, in practice, you could use the Indian rupee. You would go to a shop and you would get chai and you could pay for it in Indian rupees. Nobody would mind. Until 2015, they were comfortably using Indian rupees as a currency in Sri Lanka. Okay? So like that, as the country becomes bigger and more important, automatically there will be a certain spreading of the use of its currency. Now, there are 4 big currencies that we should think about. In addition to so these are the short forms. These are the codes that are used all over the world. The Indian rupee is denominated as INR. The US dollar is USD. The euro is EUR. Bitcoin is BTC. And the Chinese renminbi is RMB. Okay. So by the way, you may have heard the words Chinese yuan. That is actually not correct. So the word yuan is a translation of the English word buck. So if somebody says, give me 10 bucks, that's the informal use of $10. That use of the word buck translates in China to yuan. But that's not the name of the currency. The name of the currency is renminbi. Okay. And that abbreviation is RMB. So the Japanese yen, the euro, the renminbi, these are all currencies who have tried to become important and compete with the US dollar. So these are the great games that have been played in trying to become an important currency. Now, in the recent period, my second claim here, in the recent period, there has been a lot of unhappiness because the Western countries have used their control of the currency settlement systems all over the world in order to punish Iran and North Korea and Russia. Okay? So Iran and North Korea and Russia are all a little bit of rogue states today. and the Western powers have used their control of the currency settlement system in order to inflict punishment on these countries. And China is looking at these things and getting very worried. Okay, so in the future, China plans to become a rogue country. China plans to invade Taiwan. China plans to invade India, similar to the way Russia invaded Ukraine. And so the Chinese are also very worried that in the future, the Western countries will use their control of the currency settlement systems against China. So China is trying to create an alternative currency world around the renminbi, so that in the future, if the Western countries try to have an adverse impact on China, then it will not be so bad for them. Okay, so there is this whole drama that is going on around currencies. And so this is the question: how will this world evolve? What are the forces at work? Will the US dollar remain the dominant currency of the world? Will China succeed in pushing the renminbi? Will Bitcoin become important? Will we all use gold much more? Maybe gold is a good solution to some of these problems. Okay? So these are all the questions. How should we think about these questions? What is going to happen? I am going to offer some thoughts and insight on these questions. Now, my big idea is, I'm going to call it turning the telescope around, and let me explain in a moment what I mean by turning the telescope around. Normally, you've got to think about how other people will think. So there is an old saying in military affairs, I may have an invasion plan, I may have a plan on what I want to do, but the other side gets a vote. Okay, so if I invade somebody, they will fight back. They're not going to sit static. So the enemy gets a vote is a classic line in the context of military affairs. So in similar fashion, I want to bring a different perspective on the subject of currencies. Normally when we think of currencies, we think of a government, we think of a central bank. But I want to turn the telescope around and think of the people. I want to think of all of us. Okay, governments may want to do anything, but finally, you are the user of a currency, I am the user of a currency. You will make decisions about how much to hold of US dollars, how much to hold of gold. It is the decisions of every person that shape the world of currency. It is not controlled by the government. It is controlled by us. Actually, we the people shape how currencies are taken up. So the government may want to do anything, but the people ultimately choose. Okay, so my idea is that the people get a vote. It is predominantly about the people. Why is the US dollar important? Because there are many people in the world who like to use the US dollar. It's not about the government, it's about the people. So I'm going to use an example that is called dollarization. Okay, so remember there used to be many national airlines. Every country has tried to have a national airline. There is an Air India, there is a Pakistan Air, there is a Air Qatar. Every country tries to have an airline. That doesn't mean it is viable. Okay? Just because you are Sri Lanka and you will start an airline, it doesn't mean that that airline is viable. Okay, in similar fashion, just because you are a country and you try to have a currency, it may not be viable. That currency might not work. That currency might not be good enough to attract customers. So many airlines started by many governments have failed. In similar fashion, there is a big phenomenon that is called dollarization. There are many countries where the government tries to create a currency, but the people, they just ignore the government and they do all their business in dollars. Okay, this has happened in 20-30 countries, that the people don't trust the currency that is issued by the government and they go ahead and do their own work using United States dollars. And this is called dollarization. So this is not unheard of. This is there in 10-20 countries in the world. So once again, I want to emphasize, just because the government says some currency is good, it doesn't mean the currency is good. The people have to agree. And the people choose how they want to conduct their business. And we should not assume that just because the government says that so and so is the currency, then that currency will get used. It's like an airline. Just because Bangladesh starts an airline, it doesn't mean that that airline is going to work. So let's turn the telescope around. Let's not think about a currency from the viewpoint of the government. Let's not think about the currency from the viewpoint of a central bank. Let's think about a currency from the viewpoint of the people. What do the people like? What will the people choose? What are the factors that are considered by the people? What makes a currency attractive to the people? Okay, so we will go after this question that there is INR, the Indian rupee, there is USD, the US dollar, the euro, the Bitcoin, and the renminbi. How are these things seen by the people? How are they compared? On what characteristics are they compared? So that will guide us on understanding the landscape of currencies and how the world of currencies will evolve in the future. Okay, so I claim today that there are 5 considerations that are used by the people. Okay, so for everybody in this room, how would you choose what currencies you might like to operate in? I will claim that there are 5 considerations. The 5 considerations are: number 1, loss of value; number 2, acceptance; number 3, privacy; number 4, frictions in transactions; and number 5, capital control. Let's go into each of them. Okay, we'll start at loss of value. Loss of value is very simple. It is inflation. Okay, so I'm keeping money in my wallet, but there is inflation. Now the value of the money in my wallet goes down, okay? And that's not fair. Nobody likes that. Or I keep money in a bank. The bank gives me some 3.5%. If I'm a current account, I'm a business, I'm keeping money in a bank, I get 0. Okay? So a business keeping money in the bank in a current account gets 0. You and I keeping money in a savings account get 3.5. Okay? While inflation is 4, 4.5, 5.5. So actually we are losing money. We're losing ground by keeping money in a bank. So we lose ground by keeping money in cash because of inflation. We're losing ground because we keep money in a current account which is earning 0% and that is inflation. We're losing ground when we keep money in a savings account and we earn 3.5%. Actually the inflation is greater than 3.5%. Okay, so inflation is a very big deal. On top of that, demonetization is also a situation where you can lose money. Then I have the currency notes and suddenly the notes get demonetized and I have lost my money. Okay, so for example, there were many people in Nepal who were holding Indian currency and suddenly demonetization came and they lost their money. And that's not a very pleasant thing. So, we've got to think about the extent to which you're willing to trust the central bank on its ability to deliver low and stable inflation. Okay? Now, all these things take a lot of time. Money that is made by central banks has been around for hundreds of years, and there is a reason. It took hundreds of years to figure this out. Okay? Central banks have made mistakes and mistakes and mistakes, and then over the years, we have now come to the inflation targeting system. In the olden days, many bad things were done by many central banks. So these things take a long time. We should not think that anything will get solved quickly. In the field of cryptocurrency, there is some very impressive work that has been done, where the mathematicians have tried to create algorithms that are backed by theorems, so that you get some kind of mathematical guarantee that the currency will be sound. Okay? It's a very interesting and ambitious project. I say it will take a long time, meaning we are not there today, but it's an impressive project, and I think in the long run it can well become important, but we are not there today. So this is the first consideration, that the people are watching every currency from the viewpoint of asking this question: can I trust this currency on the question of inflation? Okay? So if you hold US dollars, you have high confidence that inflation will be low. If you hold euro, you have high confidence that inflation will be low. If you hold Bitcoin, you really don't know what is going to happen to the fluctuations of Bitcoin. If you hold Indian rupees, then this is the Indian story of inflation. Okay, so RBI is a young central bank. Only in 2015 they got a formal inflation targeting mandate. It takes many years to learn how to do inflation targeting. So you can see there's a lot of volatility of inflation in India. Now under the inflation targeting system, they're supposed to maintain inflation from 2% to 6%. And you can see that many times they've got higher inflation than that. In 2015, the inflation targeting system came up. But here and here, again, they've got inflation of above 6%. So they are not yet successfully delivering on the inflation targeting mandate of 2015, where they were supposed to deliver inflation between 2% and 6%. So, India is still work in progress on developing a trustworthy inflation targeting system. It will come, but this will take time. You look at other countries, it has taken hundreds of years to learn how to do central banking. It doesn't come easily. Meaning today, the US Fed or the European Central Bank, they look very impressive, but they are standing on hundreds of years of failure. So that's how it will progress. That there will be failure and failure, and then people will start screaming, and then RBI will get their act right. Okay? So these things don't happen quickly. Just because you pass a law, it doesn't mean that suddenly RBI learns how to do inflation targeting. There's a learning process. We are on that journey. Okay, criteria number 2 is acceptance. Okay, I was saying that if I go to Sri Lanka, it used to be the case that if you went to Sri Lanka and you tried to pay for a coffee using Indian rupees, then the shop is likely to accept. Okay. You could go almost anywhere in the world, and if you offer dollar bills, then people will generally accept it. Okay, so I think that out here in Nellore, so I think that faculty members should organize an experiment. Take a random sample of 20 coffee shops in Nellore and go try to buy a coffee by paying various currencies of the world. So is the shopkeeper willing to accept Japanese yen? Are they willing to accept euro? Are they willing to accept US dollars? Okay. So that would be an interesting measure that in Nellore, what are the currencies of the world that are being accepted by normal coffee shops? Okay, and then run the same experiment in Chennai, run the same experiment in Bombay. Okay, I think there's a nice research project waiting to be done on awareness and acceptance. Find out how many coffee shops in Nellore will give you a coffee in return for 0.0004 bitcoins. Okay, so many research projects can be done, and I encourage you to go do all of them. So I have heard rumors that in the real estate market in India, it is now possible to buy land or buy real estate paying purely in Bitcoin. So that much acceptance has happened. That for real estate in India, you can pay Bitcoin and you can get transactions. These are just rumors. I don't know if that is actually true. The importance of the US dollar in global finance happens because there is a network effect that the suppliers of capital and the users of capital all over the world go to London and they go to New York. The financial markets are there, the financial intermediaries are there, and they all speak the language of US dollars. So the US dollar is the most powerful network effect of the whole world, that both sides, the buyers and the sellers, are coming together to operate in the US dollar world, and that is why the US dollar is so important. Okay, so what is criteria number 2 of acceptance? The people are watching each currency and thinking, how widely is it accepted? Okay, so if somebody tries to say Bangladeshi taka, then you will wonder that can I go to Nellore and buy coffee by paying in Bangladeshi taka? If I can't, then it's not such a great currency. Okay, so widespread acceptance is an important measure. In most places in the world, the Indian rupee is not accepted. The Indian rupee is not considered a hard currency. So the acceptance of the Indian rupee is pretty poor because of the way in which capital controls have interfered with all of us and our ability to participate in the world economy. If somebody gets Indian rupees in Cambodia, they will have to struggle to convert them into US dollars. Okay, question 3 is privacy. Okay? All of us want privacy. We want to do our own life, and we don't want anybody to observe what we are doing. All over the world, governments have built surveillance systems where they are trying to watch every single electronic money transaction. Okay? So there is a fundamental tension between what the people like and what the governments are doing. At present in the world, there are two great systems by which the people are able to achieve privacy. One is cash and the other is gold. Okay? So cash is used all over the world. It is convenient that US dollar and euro currency notes are very compact. In a small bundle you can represent a lot of value. So these get used all over the world for doing cash transactions. Similarly, gold is very compact. In your pocket, the amount of gold you carry can actually add up to a material amount of value. While many people think that cryptocurrencies have privacy, that is actually not true. The transactions that are done in cryptocurrency are fully visible to the law enforcement agencies as of today. In the future, the technology can evolve further, but it is a myth. It is not true that cryptocurrency transactions deliver a lot of privacy. That is not the case. I also think in the future that the mass surveillance systems that are being run by governments to track every single electronic money transaction will increasingly come to be seen as unconstitutional. And so that level of surveillance also, I believe, is going to go down in the future because it is incompatible with the liberal democratic constitution. A government cannot survey all activities of a person without having a warrant. So it's a fundamental feature of constitutionalism that a government cannot just gather data for the sake of gathering data. They have to first go to a judge and get a warrant, only then they can gather data. So I think both sides are going to evolve. I think cryptocurrencies will develop better privacy. Government-backed currencies will face constitutional law challenges about their mass surveillance systems. And of course, there is cash and there is gold. These are all ways in which people will try to get more privacy. And bottom line, I claim that criterion number 3 is privacy. The people are looking at each currency and asking how much privacy do I get. We will all favor a currency that gives us more privacy. Criterion number 4 is friction. Okay, in the modern world, everything works through electronic systems, and you want convenient, frictionless access to electronic systems. You want to be able, as a company, you want to be able to build and run electronic systems that can do transactions on that currency. And many governments are putting barriers against that. So for example, in India, if you want to participate in UPI, you have to be a bank. If you are a non-bank, then you cannot be a first-class participant of the RTGS system, of the UPI system. If you are a non-bank, you can become a customer of a bank, but you cannot be in the upstream system. Whereas in cryptocurrency, that's not the case. Anybody can become a participant. Anybody can become a first-class participant in the core settlement systems of the cryptocurrency systems. So there is lower friction, there is lower complexity to build IT systems around the better currencies, whereas the less attractive currencies have more friction and it's more painful to access. Finally, fifth and last is capital controls. Okay, the people want to live in the whole world. You and I want to live in the whole world. We want to diversify our portfolio across the whole world. We have friends and family all across the world. We have business interests outside India. And so we always want the freedom of moving money all across the world. While some governments, such as the Indian government, try to tell us, no, you will only keep your money in India, and the government will interfere in our cross-border activities. So gold is good in this respect. There are no barriers to movement of gold across the border. US dollars, cryptocurrency, these are global currencies. These governments don't try to interfere in the freedom of the people. And the fifth criterion is capital controls. The people are watching each currency from the viewpoint. Am I forced to operate in one country? A good currency is one in which you are not forced to operate in one country. So I have shown 5 criteria. Now let's apply these criteria to analyzing the USD and gold and Bitcoin and INR. Okay, I'm just going to do 2 as an example. Loss of value, the USD is good because they have 100 years of a good central bank. They will deliver 2% inflation. You don't need to worry about high inflation in the United States. In India, we are still starting. We got our inflation targeting only in 2015, and I showed you the graph. We're still at relatively high levels of inflation. Okay, in terms of acceptance, the USD is accepted everywhere. The Indian rupee is accepted in a limited way. There are a few establishments in the world that will accept Indian rupees. Most establishments of the world will not accept Indian rupees. In terms of privacy, USD electronic transactions are low, USD cash is high. INR is the same. INR electronic transactions, privacy is not there. INR cash transactions have high privacy. So USD and INR are equal in that respect. Then in terms of frictions in transactions, the USD is reasonably low. In India, the frictions are reasonably high. The limitations by RBI on plugging into the core payment systems are more onerous than is the case with the US dollar. And finally, the United States does not have capital controls, while India has a lot of capital. So this kind of analysis takes us to a structural understanding about why the US dollar is the world's most important currency, about what is the deficiency of the Indian rupee. And then we can think of a challenger, we can think of the renminbi, we can think of the Bitcoin, and now we can start going component by component and we understand why Bitcoin works in certain respects, what are the limitations of Bitcoin, why the Chinese renminbi may work in some respects, and what are the limitations of the renminbi, and so on. So what I've offered is a systematic mechanism to look at a currency and judge whether this currency will become an important currency on the world scale or it is just one more airline. So I want us to see currencies as a competitive landscape. We are not just obedient that government says Indian rupee and we will do everything in Indian rupee. Actually, we are all optimizers. We have objectives and based on the relative features and capabilities, like we choose a motorcycle, we choose a currency. So we will look at what are the features of various currencies, what are the features of various motorcycles, and like that, we will choose a better one. And we should not assume that every country will have an airline. We should not assume that every country will have a successful currency. It depends. It depends on the features. I mean, in some countries, we will find institutional capability to build a good currency, and then that will work. And when you fail to develop those institutional capabilities, then the currency will not work. Okay? So I am done with my main talk. You will get access to this slideshow. Everything, and with Susan's slideshow, everything that is pinned in the link that can be clicked, so you can read more on these materials. And here are some other things you might find interesting. And I'm done with my talk. It is 11:30. Am I early? Am I late? I think I'm on time, right? Any other thoughts, comments?
My question is, why Nifty 50 only, you take the only 50 stocks, sir?
It's a good number. It's a good question. It was a round number at the time. At the time, Susan and I were thinking about 60 and 60, 70, and R.H. Patil said, no, you should use a nice round number. Now, 72 was the original number we were proposing. R.H. Patil said, do a nice round number, do 50. Actually, we disagreed today because over the years, as the liquidity of the market changes, that number should expand and shrink. And we are stuck at one decision that was made a long time ago. Actually, all these decisions, they require intelligence. You need to constantly question them. So I'm happy that your question.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, it's too high in India, not much as compared to US.
It's about central banking. So the accountability of a central bank is to deliver low and stable inflation. So it is institution building that the entire body of the Reserve Bank of India, day and night, every employee has to wake up and think, how do I get to low and stable inflation? In India, that has not happened. The Reserve Bank of India does many things. They think that managing the exchange rate is their job. They think that bank regulation is their job. They think that credit for poor people is their job. They think that credit for agriculture is their job. They do many things. They try to ensure low-cost borrowing for the government of India. So when you're doing 20 things, you will fail at all of them. And that is how we get this kind of. And the answer is focus. So inflation targeting is a legal requirement that RBI has to deliver on one goal, and that is 4% inflation. Over the years, we hope that the entire organization will be imbued with that objective. And then the solution will come. I have no doubt that it is possible. It's just about the institutional capability and focus of the Reserve Bank of India.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Saitya from Narayana IAS Academy. Sir, I would like to ask, UK almost colonized the world. In fact, Industrial Revolution started there. Then why United States is leading the global market?
So the Industrial Revolution did begin in the UK. James Watt invented the steam engine in 1776. Okay? There was a very low cultural and intellectual distance between the United States and Europe. Okay? So they kept on getting all the knowledge from Europe. By 1820, the per capita GDP of America, as per the Angus Madison database, was equal to that of the UK, which is a way of saying that as of 1820, they had the same technology as the UK. Now after that, America ran ahead because their capital and their labor quantities were bigger. It's a big country, they attracted the best people from Europe, so they got lots of migrants. So they had a large amount of people, and they had a large amount of capital, and they had the best technology. You just multiply all these things together. By 1914, America was the biggest economy of the world.
Sir, myself, I am Dr. A. Mahbub Pasha, head of the department MBA, Narayana Engineering College, Guru. Sir, in next slide, sir. The comparative assessment that you have done over there. Next slide, sir. Next slide. Next slide. Sir, here in this, I have a doubt. Actually, the loss of value USD good. As of now, the loss of value of a USD, it is low, sir. Actually, as the loss of value is low.
It's a good attribute that the inflation is low. Okay? So I'm saying that as a customer, I will like the USD because they have 100 years achievement of low inflation. So it's a good attribute. They are doing well on loss of value, on the threat of the loss of value.
Hello, sir. I'm Asrita from Narayana IAS Academy. I read recently the newspaper about globalizing the Indian rupee. How likely are we to do it in the coming years? Is it something that you see happening in the near future?
I think it's unlikely. And just last week, I wrote this article, An Indian View on Dollar Domination. So may I request you to read it?
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
So just last week.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, may I know the how to? Sir, I am Captain Reddy from this college. May I know how to help out us from black swan events in stock market?
Sorry, I did not understand.
Sir, there are so many extreme events like Harsha Mehta scam.
Yeah.
How to come out of this kind of events?
Are you thinking as an investor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My biggest advice to you as an investor is hold diversified equity indexes for decades. So you should be a long-term investor, hold for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So then each of these blips is not important. So as an investor, your perspective should be on a lifetime horizon. That you're always there in equities and you're there for decades and decades. So then these day-to-day events will not matter.
So good morning. Sir, can you go back to previous? Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Sir, coming to your second point, acceptance. Coming to other countries, Indian currency is accepted very low.
Yeah.
What is the reason for it?
It's not a hard currency. So if I am in Singapore, I go to a shop, I try to pay for a coffee using Indian rupees. What is the shopkeeper going to do? They have to then convert the Indian rupee into some other currency that they know how to use. And the Indian government imposes capital controls. So it becomes difficult, you have to work through a hawala market. So then the acceptance is poor.
Sir, my understanding of a currency peg that caused so much of catastrophe is that the peg does not sustain over a long period of time because the central bank does not mimic the behavior of the central bank that runs the original currency. Could you please show some light on that? And then how did George Soros manage to break the Bank of England?
Every word of your sentence is correct. It is precise. I'm very happy to see the precision of your thinking. If I peg the Indian rupee to the US dollar, then mathematically the only way to sustain it is that my Reserve Bank's short-term interest rate has to be exactly the same as that of the US Fed. And if I don't do that, then I'm courting trouble. Now, George Soros correctly understood that the US, the Great Britain pound, was supposed to be pegged as per some agreement against the Deutschmark. Okay? Now, at that time, in order to maintain the peg, they would have to increase the rates in the UK a lot. But George Soros understood that elections are coming, and if you raise rates by a lot, then unemployment domestically will go up, and that will prove to be politically unpalatable, so the peg will break. Okay? So he correctly understood that the only way to maintain the peg is to move in lockstep on the interest rate, and that can be very unpalatable politically. So it is not feasible to maintain it, and he predicted that this will fall apart. Similarly, there are many great economists who understood the East Asian crisis before it happened. They understood that it was impossible for Thailand to raise rates enough to keep the peg. It was impossible for Indonesia or Korea to raise rates enough to keep the peg, and that's how they were able to forecast that the peg would break. This kind of exchange rate management always goes wrong. The only viable system is inflation targeting, and the currency should be determined purely by the market. The government should not have a say in the currency side.
All right. Second question that I would want to ask you is that the sovereign defaults don't seem to really hurt countries as much as they are touted in theory. Somehow they get to go along till they peter on to the next default. Argentina has defaulted so many times. Is sovereign default a boogeyman in the world of finance that really doesn't matter?
So first let's discuss how much pain. Okay, let's take Greece as an example. You are a Greek government, you're running a deficit of about 4%. Okay? So it's a pretty substantial deficit, and suddenly all financing goes to zero. Now you have to brutally cut down your expenses by 3% and raise taxes by 1%. That is very, very, very costly. You ask any government that overnight you have to cut down expenses by 3%. You have to sack tens of thousands of people. You have to close down welfare programs. So I don't share your sense that sovereign defaults, you get off lightly. It's actually brutal for a country, even for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, which is the typical time horizon. The damage it does to the working of the society, of the state, of welfare programs, of the promises that the government may have made, of the impact on trust in society, all these have immense consequences. Governments renege on paying salaries, they renege on paying pensions. There cannot be a worse thing than that kind of shock.
Okay, I want one clarification on my understanding. monetizing debt simply means we are going to print our way out of it.
Yes. So you're going to produce lots of currency, and then with a lag of about 6 months, 1 year, you will get a hyperinflation.
Thank you so much.
How do you see Indian currency, that is a proposed currency, BRIC countries, they want to have a common currency, sir? I just joined late actually, sorry for that.
Yeah, so may I point you to this article, it's just last week, and if you will not take the trouble to read 1,000 words, I will give you the summary.
Thank you.
Nothing much is going to happen. Are we at the end of this?
So I recently ran a regression between M3 and Sensex. They seem to go in lockstep correlation.
Yeah.
Have I stumbled on something?
Probably not, because these are both I1 processes, they're integrated of order 1, and all processes I1, all I1 processes will appear to have spurious high correlations. So, because they're both I1 processes, we should not do these kind of regressions. Are we at the end of this? And back to you.
Any other questions? In fact, yeah, I will give the again. In fact, there is the flow of Professor Rajesh Asa's thought process. We are all immersed in. It is a huge enlightenment to all our financial market knowledge and thought process. Again, you have some.
Sir, recently Uday Kotak said US is the financial terrorist of the world, sir. Because of overprinting of the currency, US got, as the global market is interconnected, neighboring countries also got inflated. It is unfair, sir. So, is there any way to get out of this, sir?
Yeah, so I think these things are exaggerated. The US dollar is a global system. I was just doing this discussion around pegging, that if India will run its own monetary policy, then the exchange rate will fluctuate. If India will peg to the dollar, then we will import US monetary policy. So the countries who are importing US monetary policy are making their own decision to do so. It's their fault, so to speak. If you will run your own floating exchange rate, then you don't have to import United States monetary policy. So I don't share this conception. There are these countries who have brought it upon themselves. But more generally, I will say that in the world of globalization, we are all intertwined. We are deeply connected to each other. So whatever happens to one country will affect another. Again, you may be irritated, but that's the way the world is. That is the meaning of globalization. We are all connected. We get enormous benefits from globalization, and then we are interconnected. So like suppose you and I are deeply connected to each other, then in good times, you and I are deeply connected to each other, and that is good. But when I fall sick, you will also fall sick. Okay, it's a part of the package. The globalization is a package. Then we get tied to each other in good fortune and in bad fortune. I mean, it's just the nature of dependence.
Sir, why we, in our capital markets, why we have only 4 paid currencies? Why not more, sir?
Why we have only 4?
To trade. Only limited currencies to trade in our markets. Why not more?
To some extent, it will be about permissions that various government organizations may not like these things. But in practice, realistically, almost everything that India does with the world is US dollar, euro, British pound, and Japanese yen. So realistically, there are only 4 currencies that matter for India.
Good morning, sir. Myself, I am Dr. Shravan. Okay, I have a query in model building. Okay, in the model buildings. Sir, is there possibility to apply any deep learning model to the inflation?
Yeah, it's a very big field. Lots of people are doing it. Maybe you write me email separately and I can share some of that work with you. It's a very big field.
Yeah.
Lots of people are working on this.
Yeah, because I'm applying the traditional model like the God model, at the same time LSTM model, okay, for the stock market prediction. But I have a query when I'm seeing the, sorry, when I'm seeing your title, that time I thought that, okay, we are able to possible to apply the LSTM model in here. It means
Yeah.
in inflation.
It's definitely something worth looking at. Please write me email and I'll be able to point you to some resources.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, sir. It's a wonderful, amazing sort of talk by Professor Rajesh sir. In fact, I am very blessed that I had attended a 1 week in CMI along with my daughter, Dexter, in quantitative finance in 2018. So that's a wonderful sort of experience for me to listen to the thought process and the expertise. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, sir. I request a couple of volunteers to come to the stage so that we are not short of time. Volunteers, please. So the presentations will be shared with you, and there are a lot of resources where you can click and get the total materials. Few minutes, principal sir will join us to felicitate Professor Rajesh and Professor Susan Thomas. I request Professor Rajesh and Professor Susan Thomas to please come onto the stage for a few small formalities. Please have the seat, madam. So it is very fortunate that we are able to host them today and listen to their thought process and their thoughts on financial markets and public policy. Now, I just want to meanwhile, yeah. I just want to present sir book to on the hands of Ajay sir to Professor Rajesh C. Zambala of PP Siddhartha, Dean PP Siddhartha. It is my privilege to present to and one more book to Dr. Usha Madam, which is personality development and she's CEO of a big company in Hyderabad. All this personal branding and all, she's an expert. One more to our principal, sir, because it's my privilege. Because it should be read by all laymen and also scholars of public policy. There is a type of depth. It has, it is a modern Arthashastra. That is a phrase big people have used. If any small no time is left, sir can sign, autograph your copies. That is the privilege because of his physical presence today. Now, because yeah, you can get your copies signed for a few minutes. Then we will go for the registration. You can come. Please. I had my copy signed by Susan Madam also because this is a different one. Now, I request our principal sir to honor Madam and sir with share. Yeah. Please. I will have one shell for both sir and madam. This is from yeah. And yeah, I request our memento to be presented. This and this only. So initially our hospitality team asked me, we have to book 2 rooms. No, I said only one is sufficient for sir and madam because they are not aware. Many people are not aware, sir. So that's a very wonderful combination. And the one token of our Narayana group bag. We are basically this K-12 education, sir. All over in Mumbai also few branches we have. With your loud applause. I request the volunteers to keep all this so that it is easy to carry on the flight back to Goa. So, thank you so much, sir, for visiting us. Because of your tight schedule, I could not hold you for this. Yeah. I request closing remarks by sir and madam.
I'm very grateful to all of you for taking interest in the ideas, and I look forward to engaging with all of you.
I'm tempted to say ditto because there's nothing new to add, but it's great to have met all of you, and thank you very much for having given us the opportunity.
I request all of you to stay back. The volunteers to arrange the stage. Our CEO is coming. We will have a formal function, and other dignitaries are there. You just arrange the stage.
ఇది మనకు ఏంటంటే మీకు అక్కడ నేను అప్పుడు ఉన్నప్పుడైతే అవును సార్ ఇప్పుడు రీసెంట్గా ఈయన పేరు ఏదంటారు అబ్దుల్ కలాం పేరుతో ఒక అవార్డు పెట్టారు తీసుకుంటారు అని ఉన్నప్పుడు లేదు గైడ్లైన్స్ గురించి చూసాను రీసెంట్గా గైడ్లైన్స్ ప్రీవియస్గా వచ్చిన గైడ్లైన్స్ ఫోర్ ఆల్ క్యాంపస్ నేనైతే ఇంట్లో నా తర్వాత ఏం యూజ్ ఇది మనకు మ్యాథమెటిక్స్లో ఇంటర్ సారీ సార్ మ్యాథమెటిక్స్ అనుకుంటాను నేను కరీం సార్ నా నెక్స్ట్ పెట్టుకొని But my professor told me one thing, don't come to here after 5 years. జనరల్గా జరగదు 5 years అవుతుంది అలా ట్రై చేయండి మీరే కానీ మా ఫ్రెండ్స్ మాత్రం మన వాళ్ళకంటే సార్ అడుగుతుంటున్నాను సార్ మీ లైఫ్ ప్లేస్ కాదమ్మా మీ లైఫ్ ప్లేస్ కాదమ్మా సార్ కన్సిస్టెన్సీ మీరు చెప్పారంట నా ఇయర్ ఉంటాను కదా.
మేడం ఇంకొక 1 అవర్ మేడం.
కానీ ఇంకొకటి టెరబుల్ విషయం ఏంటి మేనేజ్మెంట్ రావడం అంటే మాట్లాడుతూ అదనంగా చూస్తే ఏబిడిసిలోనూ ఉండాలి, ఫోకస్లోనూ ఉండాలి. అప్పుడు అయితే 3 years అయిపోయింది, 1.5 year అయిపోయింది. ఆయన ఏంటి సార్ నా బ్యాచ్ అలా నా బ్యాచ్ 20,000 ఇచ్చి ఏం వేశాడు అంతకుముందు నా బ్యాచ్ వచ్చాడు 1 స్కోపర్స్ 1 స్కోపర్స్ సిఐ కట్టాలి సార్ సార్ ఇంకో చెప్తుంది అది అందరికీ అప్లికేట్ చేయాలి నా బ్యాచ్ ఇప్పుడు వచ్చేస్తున్నాడు నేనున్నది నేను అడుగుతుంటే నేను వద్దులా గైడ్ పంపిలా అన్నీ దాని వరకు పంపించేసాను అంతగా వచ్చేసింది. రీసెంట్గా బ్రాంచెస్ చేంజ్ సిటీ స్కోపర్స్ ఇంకా చాలా చేస్తే మేమంతా మీటింగ్ కావాలి మేమంతా కష్టపడి ఆ బెనిఫిట్స్ అంటే కెరీర్ పరంగా చూస్తే వేరెవరైనా how I'm able to teach in the case that scenario they are not మన మణిపాల్ దగ్గర మణిపాల్లో నాకు తెలిసిన వాళ్ళు అప్లై చేశారు లాస్ట్ ఎంతవరకు వెళ్ళిందంటే ఇంగ్లీష్ వరకు వెళ్ళింది. ఇంగ్లీష్లో ఇంగ్లీష్ తెచ్చిన తర్వాత ఇంగ్లీష్లో ఓకే అన్నారు ఇలా తీస్తే నాకు కలిసి అందుకే తెలిసిన బయటలో కలవాలని ఏం చేయాలి అందుకోసం అలెన్స్ హెల్త్ అలెన్స్ సార్ ఎలా ఉంటారు అక్కడ మన క్యాంపస్లో ఏ క్యాంపస్ ఫోర్ క్యాంపస్లో ఒక ఫ్యాకల్టీ వెళ్ళిందో చూసాను. అంటే some use cases కాదు జనరల్ కేసెస్లో ఎఫిషియెంట్ క్యాబినెట్ పడుతుంది ఓకేనా మన వాళ్ళు ఎవరైనా
అది అంటారు డైలాగ్
they won't
కండిషన్ అప్లై చేశారు పేపర్స్ మేజర్ కంప్లైంట్స్
స్టూడెంట్ నుంచి కంప్లైంట్ వచ్చినా కానీ యాక్షన్ తీసుకోలేదు కదా సార్ కొన్ని మరి అంత సీరియస్ ఏమో సార్ ఏ ఫ్యాకల్టీ నేను చూసినప్పుడు అంత స్టేజ్ వరకు పెట్టుకోలేదు నా తెలిసినప్పుడు అంత అంత స్టేజ్ ఎందుకంటే అందరూ ఇట్లా ఖండిస్తున్నారు Ba ఏమో
Sorry for the delay due to this, our there is keynote speakers agency flying back to Goa for another conference. Now we will have some formal inauguration. So now I request our principal sir to occupy the dais. Professor Rajesh C. Zampala from Dean of BB. Dr. Usha Madam from Hyderabad is a personal branding expert and trainer of this substance. Dr. Kiran Bindu sir from GIPS Business School, Bangalore. I take great privilege and proud in inviting our President Narayana Group, CA Puneet sir, to occupy dais with your loud applause.
లేదన్నా ఏమి ఇవ్వలేదు ఏమంటామో నాకు అన్న ఏమి ఇవ్వలేదు లాస్ట్లో తీసుకున్నాము ఇప్పుడు తీసుకున్న దాన్ని ఎవరు తీసుకుంటా ఉంటారు.
So again, you know, you are familiar with what is our objectives of the conference. Because of the, I wanted to again repeat to say a few words about this conference. We are organizing this India's Financial Markets Recent Trends 2023. We have received almost 100 papers from different research scholars from all over India universities. And this basically we are trying to inculcate research culture in the students and how the data-based approach is there, scientific method, how to use scientific method and prepare various conclusions and evidence-based research. So everything is becoming evidence-based now. That is the data-based world. So we have taken a lot of things, and without the support of our President Narayana Group, CA Puneet sir, this is not a bit possible. Even though I have done a lot of somersaults because of Professor Rajesh has told, we have cancelled because of various accreditation process, MBA accreditation and various travel listings. because, and also I am very happy to announce already we have done this NBA accreditation process also for EC, CSE and EEE. We have, with your loud appreciation, is a benchmark for international standards according to Washington Accord. So that helps us give lot of impetus to and quality to engineering education. And in fact, coming to MBA, we have our NSB, or Narayana School of Business, and in the terms of imparting at a business school level education in our type 3, type 4 cities. So we wanted to conduct more of activity-based, experiential, project-based and simulation and game-based learnings. We are trying to bring to our city like Nellore, which is available only in metro cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad and Chennai, and that type of quality. And in fact, sir, the return on investment, if you see the return on investment, we will be the first, I don't know the metrics, but because we are charging 30K and our students are getting 6 lakhs per annum, an average salary. So that way, because you are a finance person, so the return on investment, ROC, all the capital employed and all these things, you will better appreciate. So 30,000 per year and 6 lakhs per annum. So that way maybe 4,000% return. So return on investment we are higher than IIMs or any other business schools. Because why I say this is, our students are working in some companies, investment banking companies like HCL State Street, Broadridge, these companies, and same positions, same salary structure, other people are occupying who are studied from business schools, paying a fees of 3 to 4 lakhs per year. So I think this requires our loud applause. So that way we are increasing the stature of our MBA program, and we soon, with the help and vision and the support of our President Narayana Group, we are going to soon achieve this. And so with these few remarks, I request our principal sir to say a few words about our recent achievements and other things.
Honorable dignitaries on the dais, respected CA K. Punit Garu, President of our Narayana Group of Education Institutions. We are very fortunate to present Sir Punit Sir at our campus today. Thank you for your presence, sir. And other dignitaries on the dais. I thank all the dignitaries coming over here in spite of your busy schedules. Thank you, all the guests. And Dr. V. Dhananjay Garu, Dean MBA of Narayana Engineering College, Nellore and Gudur, HODs, faculty, teaching and non-teaching staff, participants from various colleges, and our students. Good morning, all of you. Good morning, all of you. Today, we are organizing two-day international conference on India's financial markets, recent trends 2023. So first, I would like to welcome all of you to today's conference. As all of you know that our college is started during 1998. We have completed 25 years of academic excellence in the field of engineering and MBA and MC education. So we are celebrating Silver Jubilee celebrations. So this is the first mega event we are conducting in our college. First, I would like to congratulate Dhananjay Garu for conducting this event in our campus. All of you know that ours is autonomous college. We had NAC grade to our NAC A+ grade to our college. Recently, we got NBA accreditation for ECE, EEE and CSE. So coming to this program, so you know the latest trends in financial markets. Financial markets are continuously evolving. Today's panel discussions and conference proceedings will help all faculty and students to know the trends in financial markets. I hope deliberations of today's program will be more useful for all the participants, faculty and students. I thank all the guests coming over here in spite of their busy schedules to our college to give keynote addresses and attending on panel discussions. I would like to thank once again our Puneet sir coming over here in spite of his busy schedule for attending this program. I thank Puneet sir for at any time we are asking sir at any financial assistance to our college. He is without any hesitation, sir is providing to our college. I think almost 10 crores has spent by our management during last 6 years of duration for our college. So this is the greatness of our Narayana group. So I thank, once again I thank Dhananjay Garu, Department of MBA and students of MBA for organizing this program successfully. Wish you all the best. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Now I take privilege in inviting Dr. Usha Madam. So though she is not related to financial markets, but she is a personal branding and soft skills expert. And in fact, she is chief guest for tomorrow's first BTech function.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Before I start, I really would like to thank Dr. Dhananjay for inviting me again here in this year. I was here in Feb. How many of you have known me already? Woo, that's good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Puneet. It's an honor meeting you and all the other dignitaries here. Okay, yes, as Dr. Dhananjay has already told that I am not from the financial field, but I'll try to connect something here today from what I understand. Finance is all about investment and numbers for me. So I would also say that you need to invest something from what I bring in. That's yeah, I know. That's what I'm just coming to that. All the experts here are sitting around, but I would like to connect what I bring to these things. It's all about investment in yourself. Am I right, Dr. Puneet? Yes. So it's all about investment and the approach that you are bringing, which I connect it to success. Now, everybody is rushing or running or racing to success. What success? Is it something that you all, like we just spoke about, getting a job means successful? Yes? No? How many of you say yes? That means everybody says no? I can't hear you. Alright. So if you are putting 80% of your efforts and getting only 20% of results, then you're not successful. So the day you find yourself putting 20% of efforts and getting 80% of results, that's a start to your success. Alright? And invest in what you want to be, what you want to become. Investment in all the professional, technical, soft skills and all this is fine. But like I put it across as an analogy, if you look at a dish which is so beautiful to look at, all the exotic ingredients in that and everything, the master chefs have prepared it. But what if the salt is missing in that, if you don't find the salt in it? How would you like it? Will you try it again? So that's what we bring in. We are the salt. Okay, the etiquette, the appearance and the communication, the ABC, if that's missing, then no matter how good you are, you're not going to be remembered next time. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, madam, for your sharp and sweet speech. Now I request Professor Kiran Bindu sir from JIPS Business School. In fact, he is very popular with his stock bite company, the stock market expert, stock market expert in Bangalore.
They say in finance, there are no arbitrage opportunities. But you, sir, CM Puneet Garu, have created a wonderful arbitrage opportunity for your students. It's commendable that your fees is 60,000 and your starting salary is 6 lakhs, which makes it a payback period of 1 year and one month and 1 week. It is truly commendable. I just, in the next 5 minutes, leave you with how do you value your career? How do you value your career? There are few value drivers. So when you want to go from here to Hyderabad, you will estimate the time that is required based on the time that you choose in the day to travel and the traffic that you estimate to be there on the outskirts of Hyderabad. And you say that, okay, I'm going to be taking what? 8 hours? 8 hours to reach Hyderabad. So that's called as a driver. So what drives the value of your career? How many of you here think that the value of your career is the fee that you paid for your degree? None of you? How many of you here think that the value of your career is the first starting salary that you get? None of you? Then can somebody tell me what is value of a career? The value of your career is not just the first salary that you get, but the longevity of your career. Notice in that longevity, Narayana has got no role to play. You can't blame Narayana, no? You're out of the gates. And the annual increment that you get over that span of your career. Now people are getting uncomfortable. Because 2 out of the 3 things you can't blame the college. You are solely responsible. Longevity of your career. If you work for 35 years and the annual increments that you get. Now this comes to negotiation skills where madam has a lot of role to play. How do you negotiate with a tough boss? How do you negotiate with a happy-go-lucky boss? Mastmala boss. 15% take, be happy. 20% take, be happy. I've crunched some numbers. The value of an MBA degree, if you start at 6 lakhs, work for 37 years, interest rate is at around 7%, and you get a 9% increment per annum for about 35 years, works out to 30 crores. 30 crores. Now it's totally in your hands how to make the best possible use of what information I have given you to drive the value of your career. Work for long, ensure that you get great annual increments for long, for which you need to contribute a lot. Have a great career. See you around.
Thank you, sir. I just want to add a word that our President Narayana Group is from your city, Bangalore. So that makes your words more interesting for us. And now I request our Rajesh, Professor Rajesh C. Zampala sir, Dean of PP Siddhartha Commerce and Management.
It's very indeed a great pleasure for me to associate with this particular international conference. I appreciate the efforts of Dr. Dhananjay, especially for making this a reality. I thank the principal and the management of the college, especially the CA Punit, the man behind the entire institutions. And it has given me an opportunity to meet Ajay Shah. Actually, I met him 20 years back in Mumbai. In UK Capital Markets Conference, where we presented our paper and we got the best paper award for 10,000 rupees at that point of time. So he is a very accomplished researcher. You can get the feel of him. Only for him, I was here today. So that is the capacity of a person's knowledge which will attract the people. So that is all possible because of Mr. Dhananjay here. So I appreciate the efforts once again. And as Kiran Bindu, Professor said, everything is in your hands. India is growing. India is getting recognition worldwide. Today we are the G20 leaders. At the same time, our Prime Minister is getting a lot of traction in whichever country is doing. So that itself is a great symbol for us. And not only that, and there is economically also India will become the third largest country in the world very soon. That means we are about to become the $4 trillion economy within 1 or 2 years. That means if the Indian economy is going at that speed, there is a great opportunity for MBA graduates sitting in this hall. You have to grab these opportunities fully, but for that you have to prepare in advance. Luck favors those who prepares in advance. So these type of conferences will give you the impetus as acts like a launch pad, and you should start working on your own. As it was mentioned by our earlier speakers also, you should put a lot of efforts. Kiran has just said about the importance of value. The price is what you are paying, the value is what you are getting. Benefits divided by costs. So what are the benefits you are getting out of this exercise of spending 2 years of your valuable age studying MBA program? So my sincere advice to you all is take most out of it, but invest in your own development. Today, knowledge is money. In my school days, we used to have a board called knowledge is power. That power is equal to money today. That means you can create wealth not only for yourself, but for the institution you are working and the country you are living. So in this context, take control of your own life in your own hands and be focused. Enjoyment is momentary or temporary, but the real happiness comes from the real impact you are creating for the country you are serving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You have made valuable points of the India's economic growth and that. In fact, last month I had been to San Francisco and I'm very surprised by the amount of Indian power or Indian diaspora, how they are doing all the big Silicon Valley people working there, and particularly from Andhra Pradesh. They told me that there may be a revolution against Indian or Andhra people because they are all outgoing positions of power in various Silicon Valley companies, all they are situated there. And one more thing I want to say all of you is after the lunch, our experts will give our panel discussions and more interaction. Their rich knowledge will be shared with. We have in fact 2 panel discussions. That is India's stock market reforms post 1992 is one panel discussion. Another panel, and some more people are joining. Professor S.V. Raman from Shivasivani Institute of Management Director. He is on the way because of his train delay. So we have 2 panel discussions: stock market reforms post 1992 and recent developments in Indian derivatives markets. So I request all of you to vigorously participate, interact, and get rich inputs from the speakers. And I wanted to reserve last word for our President Narayana Group CA Puneet sir. I humbly request sir to address the gathering.
Good afternoon to everyone. To all the special guests on stage. Dr. Dhananjay, who's put in a lot of efforts to bring very good speakers for your benefit, the principal and the other speakers on stage who said very little but very valuable, so thank you for that. I also learned something, especially on the valuation and invest in yourself. And sir who talked about the growth of India and the opportunities that India provides. But I'm here today to share with you a few words about the group, about the MBA department that we have, some announcements to make, and also my personal journey of management that I want to share with you. Firstly, about the group, I think this last year has been post-COVID, it's been a tremendous year for the Narayana Group. You think it's better if I take a physical mic? Is this better? Yes. This last year, 23-24, this financial year, 23-24, was a tremendous year for the group. We are now in 23 states in the country, and I'm very happy to tell you that we've recently signed to start a school in Jammu.